But I do want to introduce Chris for those few of you in this room that don't already know him. He has been the Chief Marketing and Revenue Officer at CapRadio since 24. And he oversees, now listen to this, marketing, development, membership, corporate support, and product functions. I don't know what that is, but you can tell us. Chris has 15 years of marketing experience across a lot of different industries and actually was the founder of a startup digital media company and working with students to empower student voices. She's a graduate of UC Davis. We don't hold that against him. No. And I know everybody in this room has zillions of questions. So I'm going to cut him off as far as what his speech is. Hold your questions until the end. So I'm going to turn this over to Chris Bruno. Thank you for being here. Oh, I forgot something, didn't I? Closed captioning. That's it. I think they know the drill. All right, Chris.
So what's the okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Can everybody hear me? Okay, wonderful. Well, it's so good to be here. Love being with the Renaissance Society. And gosh, I think it's maybe been close to almost 18 months since I've had a chance to speak to everyone here. So there's a whole lot to update you all on. Very excited to share that with you. And by the way, we will make some time at the end. And please, do not hold back. Ask any questions. Cap Radio, we're here. We're embracing openness and transparency. I will answer everything I possibly can. All right, so to start off, one of the things that I always like to do is say at the end of the day, we are a public service organization. We exist to create more informed, involved, and educated communities. That has been a driving force for us over the last 2 years during this turnaround, and that's something that is near and dear to what we do and who we are. At the end of the day, our service coverage area, we're reaching nearly 360,000 weekly listeners across broadcast and streaming platforms. Overall, we're serving nearly 500,000 people a week. Now, that does not include the coverage to almost 1.5 million NPR listeners across the state of California. So Cap Radio is the only public media organization that has a dedicated reporting team in the state capital. And much like NPR stations rely on NPR for their daily programming coverage, stations throughout the state of California rely on Cap Radio for government coverage every single day. And that gets distributed throughout the entire state, covering 97% of California counties. Now, we're going to dive right into it with this next slide. So let's take a look back. So 2 years, well, actually more than 2 years ago, in the fall of 2023, we had a CSU audit that came out. That was described as the worst audit in CSU history. I know, right? Indeed. It included 17 observations and 42 recommendations for compliance improvements. I am extremely pleased to share that within 1 year, we had submitted all 42 compliance recommendations in alignment with the CSU. Now, Sacramento State was a big part of that. We contracted out our accounting services to Sacramento State. Today, we have a dedicated team at Sac State in their accounting services department that works closely with us to help manage the finances, get everything in order so that we understand where every dollar is going and what's happening related to that. We've also implemented a number of internal controls. So things like delegation of authority. We have permissions on who can do things like negotiate contracts, who can authorize those contracts, what are the number of signatures that need to take place. And all of that is fit within the CSU system so that payments cannot be made. Like, for example, $1 million furniture contract without anyone knowing. We, we do have ultimately those different kinds of internal controls in place. We also have updated things like our bylaws. Our board, if it's not in our budget, which gets approved not just by the finance committee and recommended by the finance committee, but approved by the board, of $100,000 or more, that item must go to the board for approval. Otherwise, it cannot be authorized by anyone, including our general manager. So we have a number of these controls in place. Additionally, there were a number of issues just related to CPB. Now, that may not be quite as relevant, unfortunately, today, but we are now in compliance with all federal and state reporting standards. We do have discrete accounting, which means we understand where everything is going with our finances, and we've embraced public notices and transparency. So if you go and search for the CapRadio Board of Directors, we have a dedicated page that includes ways to access our public meetings for the Board of Directors, every single one of our committee meetings. You can participate in person or via Zoom. You can also access all of our meeting minutes. We have our operating agreement, our bylaws. We even have our conflict of interest policies for board members publicly available for viewing however you want. And by the way, I will state that we not only updated our bylaws, we also updated our conflict of interest statements, and they are quite a bit more in depth this time around. So all of those things are in place, and we're moving forward. In fact, right now, we're in the midst of a follow-up audit with the CSU. And while we're going through that process, just from a preliminary standpoint, it is night and day from where we were just a couple of years ago. So that's really a testament to all the work for the team here at CapRadio and at Sacramento State, getting this in order so we can build a strong, sustainable future for public media moving forward. Now, I'm sure you may have heard some things in the news recently. And honestly, while all of this has been going, it's been incredibly difficult for us to really sort of stay mum, if you will, because so many things were taking place. And of course, there are things that we cannot share with law enforcement investigation as those things proceed. But today, there are two very important things that have taken place. One, charges have formally been filed against our former general manager. And we, from our standpoint, that is something where over the last 2 years, CapRadio has been relentlessly pursuing the truth and has been working so hard to understand and remedy everything that took place that pretty much brought us to the brink of financial collapse. And so with this, accountability has been incredibly important. And we are very pleased to know that those that took actions against CapRadio and our supporters will be held accountable. Now, last year, something else took place that was also very important, and that's our pursuit of remediation. So CapRadio, we received a $1.3 million insurance payment for alleged, the attorneys say I have to say, alleged financial crimes against our supporters. That's incredibly important because when we think about what occurred here and what took place, it wasn't just what happened to CapRadio and the staff and what we endured, but these were alleged financial crimes against our supporters. So we have recovered those funds through that insurance payment. And not only that, but it allows us to hand off the civil suit that we filed to the insurance company. So now they are pursuing the civil suit. And when that is concluded, CapRadio also receives the first right to recover the legal fees incurred. So we will be able to recover potentially around another $100,000 in pursuit of that. So not only are we no longer incurring legal fees, but we will recover what we've spent so far.
You would move 2 feet to your left? Yep.
Sorry. No, absolutely. Oh, yes. Okay, sorry. Thank you. I appreciate it. Wonderful. Okay, so let's start talking about some really exciting things that have been happening at CapRadio over the last year. So one, we've been focused on content. Now, one of the things is 2 years ago, CapRadio had around 105 staff here in Sacramento. Today, we're operating with about 60 staff. Now, even despite the staffing numbers that we have, we've more than tripled the amount of local content production. Our team is operating with just renewed vigor to serve the community and doubling down on the local content that serves the community. Nia Town, our chief content officer, came in January 2024 and has just been truly a breath of fresh air. And one of the things that she's been focused on is what she calls the live, work, play approach. And so, of course, Cap Radio is always going to focus and cover things like politics and government. But how do we think about if you live, work, or play in this region, do you get the content that you need to feel connected? How can you get more involved by understanding community activities that are going on? How can you better understand policy and local government and the way that impacts your life so you can make informed decisions? And how can you have a sense of pride of place, something that brings us together and makes us feel more connected as a community? What's so exciting is that with the increase in this production, and at this point, if you listen, so we have what we call our broadcast clock. So morning edition, all things considered, they essentially are set up like this and rotate. And so not only when you get the NPR coverage from that, but we have chances to do our local reporting throughout. Well, we're at a place now where every hour we're coming up on almost 15 minutes of local news coverage to help people stay connected to our community and the things going on. And over the last 12 months on the news station, we've averaged 165,000 weekly listeners here in Sacramento alone. And on the music station, 85,000. And the growth that you're seeing there, 25% compared to the previous year, and 42% is something practically unheard of throughout public media right now. In fact, in October of 2025, we had a combined listening audience on our two Sacramento stations alone of 300,000 weekly listeners. We had not seen numbers like that in 4 years. And what's pretty exciting too is on the music station, it was the first time we had ever crossed 100,000 weekly listeners. So by the way, for those that say classical and jazz is dying, well, some of these numbers say a little different story. But in addition to that, we're also trying to think about the type of coverage that we have and how we can be relevant to future generations. And one of the things that's very exciting is this daily news that helps develop the habit and the loyalty that we need to serve our community. It is resonating, and we're seeing growth in a demo that is a challenge for public media overall. And we've seen over the last 12 months, 32% growth in the 25 to 44 news listening audience. Now, we can't broadcast and deliver on our public service mission if we do not have a strong core infrastructure. Now, the team led by David Bourne in technology and operations is top notch. So excited to have them and what they've done. So some things that stand out, studio rebuilds. So when we had the equipment that we purchased, when we were looking at potentially moving to the 730 I Street headquarters downtown, well, we were able to salvage that and bring the equipment, state-of-the-art equipment, back to our headquarters right on the Sacramento State campus. They redid and rebuilt 9 studios, fully upgraded. I know it's a little tough to see, although maybe tours later on, you'll get a chance to check it out. That's the new Insight Studio. It is stunning, and it helps with the coverage and the interviews that we do there. They did that for all 9 studios. They've also integrated new technology, and they've really built in a robust network with redundancies. So if something fails, something can kick in so we can stay on air and do our jobs. They set up the first ever network operations center. So if you go into the operations section at CapRadio, they actually have a whole slew of monitors up on the wall. And it's incredibly hard to see in this photo, but they actually have all of our broadcast towers mapped out. They can see in real time. So if you see those little green bars in real time, they can see sound levels. They can see how it's operating. They can actually have notifications set up so if something malfunctions or goes down, they can be notified to see and find out what's happening. And if they can, they have remote access capabilities now, so they can actually solve problems right here on site at CapRadio instead of having to go directly to the tower. It's actually really, really phenomenal. And they've set up and focused on creating a world-class broadcast experience. So there's ways to break in and out with one touch to help with our anchors during breaking news events, seamless transition between the national NPR content, the local content from CapRadio, and backup feeds for the station. What does this mean? They've decreased our downtime by half. That is something that is just really, really exciting. And it's really a testament to the hard work that they've done over the last 12 months. Now, as we think about all the content that we're producing, making sure that we have the broadcast infrastructure, the audio production and recording, we're also starting to think about the future. And so last year, we released a completely overhauled and redesigned mobile app for our listeners. It's our #1 streaming platform, and that's something that we chose to invest in as we think about being more accessible to more listeners. So if you haven't checked it out, you can visit capradio.org/app. It allows you to listen or anywhere you are. You can read articles, and it's setting things up for a future as we think about how do we take our content and serve our audience beyond the linear broadcasting platform. So with broadcasting, you're really listening in a linear fashion. But we're producing all of this local content, whether those are specific news, politics and government coverage, series, content series that we're doing. I don't know if any of you listen, for example, on the music side to Jennifer Reason's local artist feature. Well, if you're listening on broadcast, you better be available to tune in at 12 or 7. But when we think about how we can deliver that moving forward, if we can package that into on-demand listening experiences on the app, you can then start listening to individual episodes at your leisure or focusing on the ones that you care about. And so that, as we start thinking about the future and creating more of that experience that's relevant to more people, we're now in a situation where we can start delivering on that as well. And of course, which we're going to talk a bit more about, sustainability, we're thinking about new and innovative ways of making ease of use and removing barriers to support the station. So one of the things that the product team has just rolled out is the new multi-step donation form. So what this means is it's mobile friendly and mobile first. So instead of trying to scroll up and down a screen and enter in 20 fields or whatever it might take to donate, it provides a way where you can go through each step and just fill in what's needed or have that automatically populated. It also includes Apple and Google Pay integrations. So if people are using those tools, which we know through audience research that a significant number of people do, especially some of the younger generations, how can we make supporting something that you value as easy as possible? Okay, now we're going to talk about something that is what we're living and breathing here at CapRadio, and this is the 100% community-supported sustainability model. Now, I'm sure you're all aware of what's been going on in the industry with the CPB funding rescission and then shutdown and disillusion. Public media stations have lost federal funding. Now, CapRadio, because of what occurred with our finances in 2023, we actually lost all of our federal and state funding that we were receiving back in 2023, early 2024. We're talking about at that point millions of dollars. So we were forced at that moment to really rethink and pivot our approach to sustainability in that capacity. And that's what ultimately drove us to the community supported model that revolves around two key pillars. That's member support. And when I say member support, that is all of you that are in this room that support Cap Radio. And I'll take this moment to say thank you, because without member support, Cap Radio does not exist. Additionally, local business support. Between local business support and our members, that is 90% of our funding. Beyond that, we have funding on the development side. That includes vehicle donations, and it surprises everybody when I tell them that we do $800,000 a year in vehicle donations. So, indeed, we process nearly 1,000 vehicle donations a year worth around $800,000. So if you hear those spots about once an hour talking about donating your vehicle, that's why we do it. And if anyone is interested in donating a vehicle, you can send them our way. Additionally, we have plan gifts, and we have 2 unrestricted philanthropic grants from foundations. And that's what makes up our core funding. Now, when we pivoted to this model and everything started to happen with the funding rescission and CPB shutdown, word got out, and we actually received an inquiry from Ira Glass's team from This American Life, and they were kind of curious to understand more about what was going on. And so we sat down and had a conversation and explained some of the things that we were doing and how we were approaching sustainability, member support through this model. Ultimately, it was extremely exciting for all of us because at the PMCC, and that's an industry conference where Ira Glass was the keynote speaker, he actually featured Cap Radio's approach to sustainability during his keynote address, which was really exciting for us all. After that, word got out, and Jennifer Holm, who I believe may be sitting here, our Senior Director of Development, so if you see her, say hi. We were asked if we would give a presentation to the public media industry to talk about how we overcame the CPB funding loss. In fact, our presentation ended up being much more of a story because we did not just lose CPB funding, we came back from an entire financial crisis and a media firestorm to boot. And so in that, we had a chance to talk more about our approach to sustainability, the relationship and the role that we play with the community, which has really become this kind of symbiotic relationship where we're trying to place more time and effort in investing in creating a stronger community and uplifting organizations in the community. And then that investment comes back and returns to us, as well as some innovative ways that we're approaching support and breaking down barriers and silos internally to work together to support sustainability and growth. And we ended up making that presentation to over 200 industry representatives. And afterward, several of them followed up to dive deeper into these ideas. And so the silver lining for us, and I think something that we find and that we're very grateful for, is that despite all of the challenges that we faced, 2 years later, we can take the lessons that we learned and what we've been able to accomplish and share that with the industry at large and help them out during a time where they're in crisis and trying to figure out what is the next step and where do we go from here. So when we talk about our sustainability model, and when I talk about the role that Cap Radio plays in the community, last year we launched some initiatives that really kind of set our mindset in motion. So Big Day of Giving, as many of you know, I'm sure, is really a regional event in support of 800 nonprofits. And this is something where right now it's not just public media. There are many organizations that are having significant challenges, that are having funding cuts. And so we feel that as a public media institution, as a community-funded organization, if the community thrives, CapRadio thrives. And how can we help support and uplift organizations in a way that creates a stronger community overall? So we actually worked on setting up an unprecedented collaboration and partnership with the Sacramento Region Community Foundation to serve as the visionary media partner for Big Day of Giving. We brought them in studio, we put together spots, and in fact, for 2 weeks, we raised awareness overall for this event of giving to support the region. And you know what? Not only did Big Day of Giving raise a record $13.8 million, CapRadio also raised a record $200,000 that day. And that's something that I think we're very, very excited and proud of in terms of how we can uplift the community and seeing the community invest back in CapRadio. Now, when we did that, we had an idea of this is one day. Is there a way that we can help uplift nonprofits all year long? So concurrently with our partnership for Big Day of Giving, we launched something that we call the Nonprofit Showcase Program. Now, this is something where this is a marketing, business-led initiative that's completely separate from the editorial content side of things, but we allow nonprofits to come and apply to tell their story. They get a chance to come in studio, talk about their mission and their services. We turn these into 30-second promotional spots, and then we air them across our stations. And to date, we've had over a dozen nonprofits participate in this program. And hearing the feedback from them, being able to have those people say, oh my goodness, I heard you on CapRadio, having people inquire, and also hearing how valued this is from community members, people that care that CapRadio is not just thinking about ourselves, but thinking about the community at large, is something that is part of our new approach and our new vision for service to the community. Now, as we talk about that aspect, we really reimagined our approach to community partnerships. So with community partnerships, one of the things that we looked at is how can we focus on key elements? We had goals around community impact, brand awareness, donor engagement, and fundraising. And so as we really revisited this, we ended up putting together over a dozen partnerships, and we're just getting started with arts and culture organizations, with neighborhood associations, with other nonprofits and other organizations doing good in the community to put on exclusive member events. We bring our partners in studio to help talk about CapRadio's story and the impact, to include things like brand awareness and advertising. So whether that's Broadway Sacramento, where if you go to one of those shows, and honestly, it gets me every time, I love seeing those huge digital banners with CapRadio, or how we partnered with the Sacramento Choral Society. And that's something that's been very exciting for us. Or the Sac Century Challenge, and having that presence in the community and being able to support these organizations and also having that reflected back on CapRadio. And of course, the Renaissance Society. And I have to say, thank you, Deanna, for working with us, because that's been extremely, extremely valuable and exciting for the Renaissance Society and CapRadio. And if you've heard, not only were we putting up on-air spots, but you may have heard Deanna as well on air. And I love hearing that spot every single time it airs. You sound wonderful. Now, as part of that partnership, and that's what I wanted to tease, we will be offering Renaissance Society members exclusive tours of CapRadio. We're going to be working on putting this together over the spring and summer. So very, very excited to work through that. You'll get a chance to come through the studios. You'll be able to get to talk to different departments. Seriously, if you get a chance to see David, which he's always there running through his whole spiel, it is fascinating what they're doing with the broadcast infrastructure side, seeing our newsroom and more. And you'll get a chance to talk to leadership as we continue to really embrace our role in the community and our partners. So we're very excited to have folks from the Renaissance Society join us at CapRadio, and there will be more to come in that regard. So, we've had quite a busy 12 months. So along with everything that we've been doing on the broadcast side and the content side, we've also been focused on revenue, restructuring, and sustainability. So as part of that model, we've been looking at a few really interesting things. So one, thinking about the development and membership function and how we're becoming more specialized and thinking about how we can be efficient and support core functions. So now we have a dedicated member services team. They're focused on membership program management. How can they do that as efficiently as possible so that they can spend time doing customer service? Being able to, so for us, we want to be able to get feedback and do surveys to understand the community better. Because as a community-funded resource, we need to understand the needs of the community, and being able to have that available and provide that service is very important. To think more about how we continue to look at membership development. And on the donor development side, thinking about engagement efforts and ways that we can continue to show the value and impact of what we provide so that we can continue to inspire support for what we do. Because again, without member support, we don't exist. But again, it's also been extremely inspiring to see that support. In fact, over the first 6 months of this fiscal year, membership support at CapRadio is up 30%. And that is nothing short of just remarkable. So when I say that, by the way, everyone watching and everyone in this room, thank you, because we can't do this without you. Now, one of the things that occurred in 2023 is that we rather abruptly contracted out our sponsorship team to a third party. So they were operating still kind of in our offices, but it was really managed by another organization. So one of our strategic priorities that we've been working from is to operate as one company with one mission. And as part of that effort, last year, we reintegrated the sponsorship function in-house. Because if our two core pillars are member support and business support, it's important for us to be in alignment, for us to be able to tell our story, for us to work together as effectively as possible so that we can continue to operate sustainably and maximize the impact of our community support. So to give you an idea of how some of this has worked, we have an initiative that we call product packaging. So a few years ago, we have this wonderful music initiative, and it's a month-long programming initiative in December that's holiday programming that everybody loves. And years ago, we would have that programming initiative, and it would take place. And maybe our sponsorship team at the time, they might raise a few $1,000s around it. Well, today, as we're working more cohesively and together, we're looking at activating the different teams to work on sustainable options around this package. So the marketing team, for example, built a just remarkable brand called Sounds of the Season with a branded programming flyer and structure and marketing materials to help support it. We've then brought in the sponsorship team and put together 4-week packages to help support Sounds of the Season as an item. And then we've worked and coordinated with the donor development team to offer recognition and donor opportunities around this initiative. So just to kind of give you a sense of how that's gone, a few years ago, we had this wonderful programming initiative, and we put in all the resources that we did to provide an amazing service, and we raised around $3,000. Well, December of 2025, we put on another phenomenal programming initiative, and through this coordinated effort around Sounds of the Season, we raised nearly $50,000. And this kind of approach and collaboration is something that we're working toward as we continue to think about how we build a strong, sustainable future for public media. Now, as we get to wrapping up, one of the things that I do kind of want to highlight here, because it has been a really key part of what we've done, is some of the content structure and internships. So CapRadio, as many I imagine may know, we had a deficiency around our educational mission, and we actually had not had internships for at least since the pandemic. And one of the things that we've done is we've developed a robust internship program. So over the last 18 months, CapRadio has had 7 paid student internships that have gone through the program. That's our standard internship program. They'll spend anywhere from 6 to 12 months working in the newsroom or on the music team. We also just worked closely with ASI. And I don't know if any of you know Jen Galanato at ASI, but she is a phenomenal student. And honestly, if I thought I was ambitious, oh my goodness. But we worked with her to launch the public radio experience. And so instead of a dedicated role working with CapRadio, it's an opportunity for students to go through multiple departments to get a sense of different roles so they can figure out if there's something that really resonates with them. Now, over that time, we've been able to build a structure where people also have more chance for growth. So there's new roles. We've also brought on new hires. But what I think we're most proud of is that 3 of our former interns are now staff at CapRadio, including 2 in the newsroom, and they're absolutely phenomenal, and 1 on the music side. Now, I say that because what I'm going to share next is a teaser that you all will be the first to see. And this is something, just like, and this feels similar to some of these things that we did around the nonprofit showcase and the Visionary Media Partnership. But we are working right now on an unprecedented partnership and collaboration to support public media and student advancement. So I'm very, very excited to share with you all that CapRadio is now launching the Public Media and Student Advancement Fund. This is a dedicated, restricted fund that supports internships, hands-on student experiences, and innovation in public media. What we're going to be doing is we're partnering with Sac State to help provide these experiences for the future, because we're seeing the impact of these talented students that are coming in, that are hungry and motivated to contribute. And they are doing just such a phenomenal job. And by doing this, we are now working on creating a self-sustaining model. So just like CapRadio's created a community-supported model around public media, we're working to do that around student internships and experiences, and also leaving the door open for the future. Because when we think about what the future looks like, and by the way, I don't know that anyone can really tell you, given how quickly technology is advancing, what's a better way to get new ideas, to think about how to connect with new generations than those generations themselves and the students that are coming in. And we're extremely excited to do this and to actually partner for the first time ever, by the way, for Give Sac State Day. So CapRadio is actually working on a collaborative fundraising initiative for Give Sac State Day around the Public Media and Student Advancement Fund. Now, one of the things that I do want to just mention right now, because I think it's very important, is the work that the Renaissance Society does. The work that you do with the Scholarship Fund is so important. And in a way, that's kind of how I view these two fitting so well together. You all help support and provide opportunity for students to have education and an experience. And CapRadio, with this new fund, is now providing an opportunity to get real world experience and become career ready for the future. And so I'm very excited to share that. And I do just want to celebrate all of the work that you do in supporting students, because together, this helps create a future focused on the community, because without the next generation, where do we go? All right, I think I'm at the 3:45 mark.
Questions back there?
Yeah, I mean, I may only be able to shift a little bit.
Thank you. That's very enlightening. I guess. Hold it close. Hold it close. Real close. Is that close enough? Um, a number of us are probably on nonprofit boards, and we watch the news unfold with great concern about CapRadio. And I wonder, to try and be positive here, if you have advice you could give nonprofit boards so that we don't have other agencies winding up with the kinds of issues CapRadio faced.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. I think it's a matter, of be vigilant, ask tough questions. If someone is not willing to dive deep into those elements or those pieces, don't just say, well, that's okay. And I think that's one of the things, is really just kind of the overall responsibility. It's one of the things that when we see the new board here at CapRadio, the level that they dive into. I mean, we obviously have a number of internal controls. We have Sac State Accounting Services that's supporting it. But how involved and active our board is today, how diligent they are diving into the finances, asking tough questions, looking at every single document that's coming through, if it's an MOU or an agreement, to make sure that that's in place correctly. That I think is really important. And that's something that sometimes can get lost with nonprofit boards. So I think it's really just, that vigilance and understanding the fiduciary responsibility as a board member. Oh,
Hi, Chris. Thank you for the presentation. I have two questions. I understood that this was going to be building on the future of public broadcasting. There was an article in the New York Times probably a month or two ago on the basically what I would call the cannibalistic nature of public broadcasting right now, where there's public broadcasting and there's a group that doesn't like what's going on now. And do you know what I'm referring to? Or anyway, I would like your comments on that. And then secondly, my understanding is there have been some stations that Capital Public Radio has had to let go for finances. And can you address that?
Yeah, so maybe I'll start with the latter question. So yes, CapRadio in 2020 and 2021, we entered into managing operating agreements with stations in Chico and Humboldt. And the way that was set up is that at that moment, there was supplemental funding as part of that management arrangement. So CapRadio received additional funding from CPB as well as from the universities to sustain that actually sort of went away after 3 years. Additionally, what occurred as well is that CapRadio ended up managing those stations completely independently. So for example, we didn't just run a CapRadio membership. We also ran a completely separate Chico membership program. We also managed, with the existing team that we have, 18 additional towers for maintenance and engineering purposes. So we were able to work very closely with our university partners at Chico State and Cal Poly Humboldt on a responsible transition plan to actually bring those back under university management. And so one of the things that was really important with us through that process was making sure that they were going to be in a strong, sustainable position through that transition. And one of the things that I'm very proud of is that we worked closely with them to put on a welcome back campaign. And they actually raised a not even close record fundraising campaign because guess what? The community does care very, very deeply about public media. And so that's something where we had to do that because of the situation that we were in part because staffing levels were cut so significantly on our end, as well as just the management arrangement that had been set up by a former general manager at CapRadio. But we were able to do that in a way, and we're very grateful in being able to work so closely with our university partners. Now, in terms of public broadcasting, I think that generally speaking, there are a lot of thoughts and questions. I mean, what's taking place right now is unprecedented. You're seeing not just things like funding cuts and people questioning how we're going to be able to sustain a model that was set up a certain way and that model being disrupted, but you're also seeing digital disruption and upstarts and ways that are, and just the thinking about how that translates to future generations. So I think when we look at the future, it's going to require us to think outside the box. It's going to be important for us to embrace collaboration and partnerships. But it's also going to require a sense of innovation and thinking public media as a concept. What are the values that are so important to that? And what makes that resonate with the audience? And how can we translate that into the future in a way that can support and sustain itself? And that's going to be a challenge that is going to be in this world. So I will say too, that if you're faint of heart, you do not want to be working in the media industry, but it is quite the time because there's a lot going on.
Hi, thanks so much for all that you're doing for students. That I taught journalism at Sac State for 32 years, and I often took students over to CapRadio. And Joe Barr, who was then the news director, he left before the implosion, and he did, took students on tours. Students became interns, and then that just sort of died, which was really unfortunate. There was also a partnership with the Sacramento Press Club for a mentoring program. There was, and they had an event at CapRadio. What are you doing? And I know you're under tremendous headwinds with the current administration and the cuts to public broadcasting. But what are you doing to hire experienced news reporters? And also what's happening with there were two buildings. There was going to be an event space over on, I think, K Street, which was a rather lavish proposal, it seemed. And then you have the 7th and I downtown campus. So what's happening with those two buildings?
Okay, so couple pieces there. One thing that I will say is that for us, we're focusing, on community and audience service. And so we certainly have veteran journalists at CapRadio. For us, we're not necessarily going to prioritize, 30-year veterans necessarily. We also think that there's a lot of young and hungry journalists, and thinking about ultimately what is our core mission and service and how do we serve the community as best way possible. So I think it's a mix, and that's how we look at it at CapRadio. In terms of the buildings, 730 I Street was the proposed new headquarters. So in 2024, we decided that we're not moving into that headquarters. And one of the things, because I do get that question sometimes, is that CapRadio has stopped paying rent on that as of July of 2024. So we're not currently paying rent on those headquarters downtown. And there's some things that we can't really dive into, but we're working to resolve the issue with 730I. We are going to be moving forward with the venue space at 1010 8th Street. So that is about a small to mid-size 180 person plus venue in 1010 8th Street. It's called CapRadio Live. And we're working through all the pieces there. So unlike perhaps some of the way that we operate in the past, we are doing our due diligence to figure out the best way to move that forward and open it in a way that's going to make sense. And so we're going through all of those pieces right now, but we are very excited, and I'm hoping that soon we'll have some big things to share around that.
Chris,
Hey, how's it going,
Hi.
Dan?
It was great to hear all this good news. I have two little questions. One is, why did it take more than 2 years to get that sucker arrested? And the second, is there any news on the antenna fight with KVIE?
Okay, couple good questions there. 2 years, all I can imagine is based on what you might know or what you might have been reading, extremely complicated. So I think that with all of the work that went into that and the cooperation at CapRadio and Sac State to support, local law enforcement, we're very excited that they've put the time and effort to really piece that together and to see that come to fruition. But I think really it was the complexity of everything that had been taking place. But it's great to see now, 2 years later, that something has come from that. What I can tell you is what I can tell you right now. The only thing that I can really tell you right now is that CapRadio and KVIE, we are in mediation. That's what I can say, and we're optimistic that we'll find a resolution.
Hey, we have just time for one more question.
Actually, you just answered my question.
Oh, okay.
One other question. Well, I get one in the middle then. All right.
Sort of a follow-up, a tangent on what Dan was asking about. From what I understand, and I'm not going to say I've got any deep understanding,
Sure.
There's a lot of other money that was involved here and other people. And I'm sure you can't say too much in detail, but just in general, are there other monies out there that are being gone after? Because there was obviously not just him and not just him alone.
Well, so pretty much what I can say is that CapRadio has been, very diligent. And when I say the, relentless pursuit of the truth, I mean, that's really it. We're focused on accountability and remediation. With all of that, we need to take our time and approach with all of those aspects. But a lot of it too, from a funding standpoint, really came from the failed capital campaign. When we look at ultimately the financial crisis that took place and some of the investments that were made in those downtown buildings. But really, that's what I can kind of say on that end, is that we continue to be diligent and. But ultimately, if there's anything related to law enforcement, that would be.
I've really been looking forward to this because I think I had all the same questions that you had. So thank you, Chris, for being as open. And I know there's still things going on that you can't tell us your true feelings, but that's okay. Now, this is a great partnership. Renaissance totally appreciates what CapRadio is doing for us, and we're looking forward to lots more. So thank you very much, Chris.